Well, the game of the week, a meeting between two undefeateds, number three Ohio State, number six Penn State, and joining me now to discuss Bill Rabinowitz from the Columbus Dispatch. Hey, Bill, how are you?
Good, Carolyn. How are you?
Good. So, how much of this contest do you think is going to be decided between the trenches this weekend?
Oh, a lot of it. I mean, I think that's really where it is. I mean, the big question for Ohio State is can their offensive line hold up against Penn State's very, very good defensive line? Ohio State's offensive line hasn't been what Ohio State's used to in terms of being able to get push, especially on short yardage situations. And so that's a concern. They had some pass protection issues last week against Purdue. Penn State's very good with the pass rush. So I think the key to the game for Ohio State is the offensive line.
Can you walk us through some of those key matchups on the line that you're going to be watching?
Yeah, it's really the probably the primary ones are the tackles. Ohio State has two new tackles: Josh Simmons, who's a transfer from San Diego State, at left tackle, and Josh Fryer, who's a veteran at right tackle. And honestly, both have struggled at times this year. And Penn State's defensive linemen, I mean, Chop Robinson is, I mean, those guys are really good. And so if they're not on their game and they pressure Kyle McCord, it could be a long day for Ohio State.
Well, how key is that, making sure that McCord has a little bit of time to do what he needs to do?
Yeah, he's a very accurate passer. He's got a very good arm, and obviously has great receivers. Marvin Harrison's leading them. We don't know if Emeka Egbuka is going to play. He didn't play last week. He was injured against Maryland. If he doesn't play, that's a blow. If he does, obviously it's a huge benefit. But even if they don't have Egbuka, they've got a lot of depth at wide receiver. So if you give McCord time, he will pick you apart, and that's the whole key. Sure.
We've been talking a lot about the Nittany Lions defensive line. The Nittany Lions love to blitz. I mean, they've got one of the highest blitz percentage rates in the country. How do you think that Ohio State is equipped to deal with that kind of pressure?
Well, they're going to have to be better than they were against Purdue. And one of the issues they're going to have is we don't know who the running back's going to be at Ohio. For Ohio State, they were without by the end of the game three of their running backs. Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams didn't play at all against Purdue, and then Chip Trayanum was injured in that game. That left Dallin Hayden, and it's interesting. Ryan Day will talk about how good Dallin is with the ball in his hands. Kind of the inference you can draw from that is maybe when it's not in his hands, there's some struggles. He's got to pick up the blitz. That's going to be a big, big part of his responsibilities.
Bill, give us some injury updates here. I know that there's been some running backs in question, a question at wide receiver, and also at corner.
Yeah, and I wish I had better answers at this point. Ryan Day is pretty mum about that stuff in general, and obviously for a big game, he's going to be even more that way. In fact, he's moving up his time where he does his last session with the reporters to tonight, Wednesday, I should say, instead of Thursday. So that kind of tells you it's a big game. I would, if you had to ask me to rate them in terms of order of which I think they'll play, I would probably say Travion Henderson will probably play. I'm guessing Denzel Burke would play. Uh, Emeka Egbuka, I don't know. Chip Trayanum, don't know. And the other one is Mayan Williams. I have no information on that. That must have happened in practice because we don't know anything. So Ryan Day did say he was hopeful of getting all those guys back, but coaches say that every week, right? So it's part of the gamesmanship.
As you look at all the players who could be available, which one in your mind is truly the X factor that could make the difference against this Penn State team?
That's a great question. Normally, I would probably say Denzel Burke, but Penn State's receivers are not the strength of that team, and so if they don't have him this week, it might not be catastrophic. I mean, he's become a lockdown corner and really important, but I'm not sure this week it matters as much. At least the way Penn State's played so far, pretty conservatively. If getting Emeka Egbuka back would be huge because he does everything and does everything well. He takes pressure off Marvin Harrison Jr. And of course, you want your number one running back, Travion Henderson, back. And he went through warm-ups, the beginning of warm-up last week. My sense is they just wanted to be extra cautious. They figured they could beat Purdue without him, make sure he's ready for Penn State. But I don't know that. So I would say those three are the big three.
Ryan Day has never lost this matchup, Bill. I mean, frame this from a context perspective. I imagine this is the one that people circle on the calendar. I mean, how important would a win be here this week?
Yeah, second to the Michigan game. This is the one. It's the biggest home game of the year. Obviously, Ohio State plays in Ann Arbor this year. Penn State has been has played Ohio State tough almost every year. They just have had a hard time getting over the hump. Ohio State just made the plays in the end. But Penn State has never played intimidated against Ohio State. They always look like they believe they can win. And this year they certainly can. I mean, this is the most talented team they've had probably since 2017, where they lost 39-38. They beat them in 16 thanks to a couple special teams plays. I think this is a pretty even game. I think the fact that Ohio State's favorite is mostly because they're playing at home. And as we all know, Penn State is a really tough place to play. Ohio Stadium can be too, and Ohio State's Ryan Day is urging people to be loud, and they're trying to play it up. This is, as they say, a matchup game, a real one. And so Ohio State doesn't have too many of them where you go into a game really not knowing who's going to win. This is one of them.
So objectively, you think Ohio State might be a little bit more vulnerable than the line suggests? I mean, that this is pretty evenly matched?
Well, yeah. I mean, the line has Ohio State as a slight favorite. I think that's fair, mainly because of the home field advantage. But I think so much depends on, as we talked about earlier, can Ohio State's offensive line hold up? That's the big key. And the other thing on the other side for Penn State, can Penn State find explosiveness that they haven't really shown this year? Because Ohio State is explosive, and you can hold Ohio State down, and then boom, it's over. That's what happened against Maryland. Maryland really outplayed Ohio State for a chunk of that game, and then Ohio State turned it on and it was over. And that's what Ohio State can do. So Penn State, I think, has to show some explosiveness. But yeah, I think it's a fascinating matchup because of the questions that each team brings into this game.
So, Bill, it sounds like this is going to be a really competitive matchup, which is exciting for so many fans. When you look at Ohio State and Penn State, do you think either of them are good enough or can be good enough when they get the pieces back to maybe challenge a Michigan for that kind of supremacy?
Yeah, I think both. I think those three teams are pretty even. At this point, I would put Michigan a notch above. But they haven't really played anybody, and so we don't know what Michigan truly is until they get tested, and that's not going to happen for a little while, even now. I think Ohio State, if they can get their offensive line fixed, is a championship caliber team. I think Penn State, if they can show some explosiveness on offense, is a championship caliber team. And that's going to be a big thing this weekend. I mean, can Ohio State's offensive line hold up, and can Penn State show some explosiveness on offense?
And just quickly for you, Bill, I mean, Penn State's schedule, I know you're covering Ohio State, you're an Ohio State reporter, but is this also a moment for them to be as equally tested? I mean, it is all about matchups in college football, and this seems like the kind of week where we're really going to figure out which of those three is legit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Penn State opened with West Virginia. That's a credible team. And they beat Iowa 31-0, but we know Iowa's got a great defense and no offense. So this is by far the biggest test that Penn State's had. Ohio State, of course, played Notre Dame, and that went down literally to the wire. And so Ohio State at least can know that they've been put through a crucible. I don't think you can say that about Penn State. That's going to be a big test for them, especially playing on the road. But I think Penn State's really good. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I definitely would have picked Penn State to win this game. But the fact they haven't shown that taking that next step and showing the big playability on offense gives me some pause.
Can we get a score prediction from you, or at least which way you're leaning before we let you go?
Yeah, I've got to do it for my paper, so I guess I can't really dodge it. It's out there for everyone to see. And I hate predictions, but I give Ohio State a very slight edge just because of what I said. I think Ohio State can come up with a play or two, just a game-breaking play or two, that gives them enough of a cushion. But again, that's all predicated on the offensive line holding up, and that's a big question. I'm just not sure about that.
I really appreciate the time, Bill. Thank you so much. We'll be reading, we'll be watching. It's going to be a huge game. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Carolyn, for having me.